Elena had always known that marrying into the Whitmore family would come with shadows, but she hadn't realized how deep those shadows ran until the night it rained so hard the wind moaned through the cracks in the tall windows of the estate, and the electricity blinked in and out like the house itself was shivering. She had married Gerald Whitmore, a successful but emotionally distant businessman, and tried for nearly 2 years to make a home in the sprawling, too-quiet mansion outside Asheville, North Carolina, but it was not her husband who filled her thoughts late at night. It was Alex, Gerald's son from a previous marriage, who had come to live with them just after his 18th birthday, a silent, watchful boy with storm-gray eyes and a way of moving through the halls like he had always been part of the house, even when it was clear he didn't want to be there. At first, she tried to make conversation, polite small talk, gestures of kindness like home-cooked meals or listening to the music he played in his room, soft, sad songs on an old guitar, and sometimes she'd catch him watching her with a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Not quite resentment, not quite interest, but something that made her feel both exposed and deeply alone. Gerald was gone more and more frequently, always on business trips, always distant even when home. And Elena, who had grown up believing in the power of patience and gentle warmth, found herself aching for simple closeness. So one night, after hours of silence broken only by the occasional crackle of the fire, she found herself sitting on the edge of the couch, massaging her own shoulder and sighing without realizing it, until Alex, who had been sitting nearby sketching in a small black notebook, asked softly if her neck was hurting, and she, surprised by the concern in his voice, nodded, offering a half-smile and joking that she was getting old. That stress was settling in her bones, but when he stood and crossed the room to kneel behind her, resting his hands lightly on her shoulders, she didn't stop him. Not because it was romantic or intimate in that moment, but because the warmth of human touch was something she hadn't felt in so long, and his hands, careful and respectful, began to ease the knots beneath her skin while the storm outside thickened like a curtain around the house. They stayed that way for a while, in silence, until she felt herself lean back slightly, resting against him, and for a brief moment she felt safe, protected, connected, until the sound of the front door unlocking shattered the calm, and Gerald's voice, cold and sharp, called out from the foyer, forcing them apart as though they'd been caught in something unspeakable. The rest of the evening passed under a layer of frost, with Gerald watching both of them too closely, asking pointed questions masked as jokes, and Elena, unnerved, began to notice things she hadn't seen before. The way the cameras outside always pointed in new directions, the way locked drawers in Gerald's study were suddenly empty, the way Alex had stopped speaking entirely and spent long hours outside, coming back with mud on his shoes and scratches on his arms, as though he were looking for something in the forest. When she confronted him, he looked at her for a long time and said only, "You shouldn't trust him," which chilled her more than she expected, and from that moment on, she began her own quiet investigation, starting with the basement, where she found, hidden behind old boxes and crates, a false wall that led to a narrow corridor filled with old documents, photos, and strange maps of the property, many marked with dates and red ink. Among the papers, she found pictures of herself, taken through windows and at odd angles, and of Alex, younger, even before she had entered the family, and it dawned on her slowly, terribly, that she and Alex had both been watched, studied, long before they had met. She confronted Gerald with what she found, and he denied nothing. Instead, he laughed, a hollow sound, and told her that she had been chosen for a reason, that everything was a design, a pattern, that people like her were easily predicted, emotionally starved and ripe for manipulation, and when she demanded to know what that meant, he only said, "Ask Alex who he really is," which led her to the attic, where she discovered Alex sitting alone, reading one of Gerald's old journals, his face pale, eyes sunken, and when she pressed him, he revealed that he had known Gerald's secrets for years, that his mother hadn't died in an accident as the story went, but had disappeared after threatening to expose something about Gerald's involvement in a long chain of psychological experiments involving emotional manipulation, false marriages, and control. Alex told her he stayed not because he was afraid, but because he was trying to collect enough evidence to bring Gerald down, and now that she knew the truth, she could help him. But the risks were high, and nothing was guaranteed. From that point forward, the air between them changed, not into something inappropriate or forbidden, but into something fiercely protective and quietly tender, and in the moments when they embraced, not as lovers, but as survivors, they found strength in each other, in long hugs after tense days, in quiet words whispered in the dark when the world outside seemed too dangerous to face alone, and even in moments when Elena pressed a soft kiss to Alex's forehead like a mother might. It was not about desire, but about grounding, about reminding themselves that they were human and not puppets in Gerald's twisted game. Together, they began leaking evidence, slowly, anonymously, sending files to journalists, planting stories, and preparing to disappear. But the suspense mounted as Gerald seemed to anticipate their every move, staying always one step ahead, until the night came when the storm outside returned, fiercer than ever, and the house lost power completely, trapping them in shadows. They made their way to the basement, where they had hidden the final USB drive, only to find it gone, and the hidden door sealed from the other side. And just as panic began to rise, a voice echoed through the intercom, Gerald's voice, calm and almost amused, telling them that the game was over, that they were never meant to win, that they had walked into a trap built just for them. But what he didn't know was that Alex had created a duplicate drive, hidden not in the house, but buried near the creek behind the east wall, and that earlier that day, Elena had contacted an investigative team already en route, tracking GPS signals planted in Gerald's car. The door to the basement blew open not from inside but from the outside, as law enforcement poured in with warrants and flashlights. And Gerald's last expression before being taken away was not anger, but awe, as if he had finally been bested at his own game. Months later, Elena and Alex sat on a bench outside a cafe in Portland, under new names, living new lives, not as mother and stepson, not as lovers, but as survivors bound by trauma and trust. And when Elena smiled at him and reached for his hand, it was with the understanding that family was not always blood, and healing was not always linear, but that in the wreckage of a carefully constructed lie, they had found something startlingly real: each other.